Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Irish NFL Show Week 10 preview with me, Colin Cronin. Delighted to be joined by Brian O'Leary. Brian, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, Colin. It's a consistent team, isn't it? 2 nights in a row, just me and you, keeping the show on the road, shall we say? Michael is off, and I'm sure people know at this stage that Michael is in Munich, having made sure he was. He was in the limelight today, wasn't he, with Good Morning Football?
You
And
could you could spot that big Irish head anywhere in the background. Just surprised he didn't have a Kerry jersey on.
yeah, he probably missed the trick there. He could have gotten a lot more mileage out of that if he had a wore carriage. I think that would go against his grain to be wearing a carriage jersey. In fairness to Michael, Mark is off unfortunately with work commitments this week. But look, we've got 10 games, I believe, to get through over the course of the next hour or so. Another very interesting weekend, as you called out rightly so. We're getting into the second part of the season where it really starts to hot up in terms of who's going to be making their way into the playoffs come January.
Absolutely, and we are brought to you in partnership with Cassidy Travel. You can check out the specials they have for trips stateside. But Brian, they aren't our only partners.
No, we also have another partner, which is PointsBet, who are an American-orientated sports betting market. They're fortunately not now, not as yet, but they're not available as a betting option in the Republic of Ireland. But they are very good to us. They've got a lot of opportunities to work within Dublin in their technical section. So anybody who is keen to consider a new path in their working career, maybe should consider looking at PointsBet. We've had some really good conversations with them. They've been very supportive and very helpful to us. And myself and Michael do a betting podcast every week. I believe it went out yesterday afternoon, and we take all the prices from the PointsBet website, which is based out of New York. Slightly different and slightly tailored to what we'd see from the local bookmakers within the Republic of Ireland, but still, they're very helpful, and it goes towards a really good betting podcast. And we've had a great response to that betting podcast, and over the past couple of weeks, and long may it continue. So they're another partner that have been heavily involved, so it's worth calling them out as well.
Absolutely, and we do have quite some interesting games to discuss. I wonder what will be the status of Dan Schneider and the Washington Commanders by the time the Monday night game rolls around. That will be interesting to see at that point. But reports this evening that a lot of the players are none too happy with the team basically using Robinson as a distractionary tool. I suppose, Brian, kind of fitting maybe, obviously, yourself and Michael are in Munich this weekend, and there should be content kind of coming out throughout the weekend. So and last night we discussed the Thursday night football with D Orlando. So we will leave you and Michael to discuss the Bucks Seahawks, which I think should be a really interesting game. But kind of fitting that the first game we're going to discuss this evening is two of the teams that have been talked about a lot this week. Obviously, the Bills and Josh Allen's injury, but a lot of talk as well about the Vikings and whether they are for real or not. They are on the road. They head to Buffalo to take on the 6-2 Bills, coming off that loss against the Jets. What are your thoughts on this game?
Oh, this game is the makings of it. Well, yeah, I'm glad we're speaking about this one first. To me, it is the marquee game this weekend. 7-1 Vikings team, probably unexpected in many ways. I know there was mixed opinions on this show, and this is probably the one team that's caused so much heartache over the years for fans, whether you support them or not, in terms of how they find ways to throw away games. But we've seen a different Vikings this year under head coach Kevin O'Connell. We were fortunate to have him on the show late July. He was a fantastic guest. Bit of a whirlwind week for him. Don't know if everybody knows or aware of what happened to him last week with his wife having their fourth child, and he was at the birth, only then literally to leave immediately and fly directly with the team to Washington for a game which was turned out, as I expected, a really tough game. They found a way to win, and we had a conversation a few weeks back around, the Vikings team evolved would find ways to lose games when it's a one-score game. They've won 6 one-score games this year, and Kirk Cousins, and I hold my hands up, I was very arguments about him, and I didn't feel he's the right quarterback to lead them because of the personality that he has, and we've seen all the information that's come out around him. And the broken down relationship we had with Mike Zimmer, but it's clear from watching the coverage of him in the locker room last weekend, and obviously the stuff that's come out since with him travelling back and the camaraderie within the team, that he is bought into the team. The team are bought into playing for Kirk Cousins as quarterback. His stats alone last week again: 285 yards, 2+ touchdowns, third game in a row, which he's thrown 2 touchdowns on the road. That's the type of stuff a lot of people expect from Kirk Cousins. We don't know whether he's at that level of top 5, top 6 quarterbacks in the league, but certainly, especially with the money in which he's paid, that's the kind of continued success we have to see from him. They've got great players, like the Hawkinson comes in. Like we spoke about how why the Lions gave him away, but for a trade to happen within the division and for him to hit the ground running with 80 odd yards in his first game last weekend, a real threat for this offense to coincide with Justin Jefferson. On the other side, the Bills, it's a difficult one for the Bills because how does the secondary, who's had a series of injuries, looks like they're getting a few players back, manage to curtail this explosive offense of the Vikings? We've seen Cook in the backfield. Jefferson's always a threat. You got Thielen, and obviously the $1 million question is Josh Allen. Is he going to play? The likelihood right now, it doesn't seem like he's going to play. That seems to be the general consensus. He didn't practice again today. They're a different team with Josh Allen. Like essentially, they've no run game. Let's be fair. Like Singletary does his utmost. They try to keep the offense balanced, but they don't really have a run game. They brought in Hines from the Colts on the trade deadline for a reason. Try to give them a bit of a kickstart. Josh Allen essentially is the quarterback, and he's the running quarterback, and he's their running back. And without him in the team, I find it difficult, despite the fact they're at home, and many people still have them as favourites, to see how they'll win this game. I looked at the points in which each team is putting up on average. The Vikings are putting up 24 to 25 points a game. The Bills are putting up an average 27 points. But that's a very different team with Josh Allen. Takes away the run element, takes away the throwing element. They're going to have to run with Case Keenum. Let's be fair, he's a good quarterback, serviceable, but it's back to that clip of Andy Dalton conversation. Will he do a job for you for 1 or 2 games? Potentially. There's a storyline there in itself, the fact that he was with the Vikings. He went to the championship game when they got blown out by the Eagles a number of years ago. But I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the Vikings on the basis that Josh Allen doesn't play. And even if Josh Allen did play, I'd still see the Vikings running them close. But I'm going to stick with the Vikings to win this game.
Yeah, a lot of fair points there. I suppose the big question is the Josh Allen one, as you have pointed out, and we discussed on last night's show how he is the Bills' offense, and everything kind of flows through him. But missing the 2 practices, I'd be surprised if we saw him out there. I think they would be foolish. I think that the Bills are playoff bound anyway, whatever the outcome of this game. So to me, it would be crazy to put him out there, let it heal for a week. It doesn't sound like it's they seem to think he can recuperate, but why risk it this week and then he could be out long term? For me, the impetus for the Vikes is probably the fact that they after this game, like this marks, I suppose, the stretch of an absolutely brutal kind of run of fixtures for them, where they play the Cowboys next, and then they have the Patriots and the Jets, whereas for the Bills, they face the Browns and the Lions next. So I don't think the impetus is as onerous on them. I think the Vikings are looking at this and will feel that they really need to get a couple of another win. Obviously, they're in a really good position, as you pointed out, in the division. But to me, yeah, I can see why you've gone with the Vikings. I'm going to be the same. I think the Vikings will do it. Michael is going with the Bills. He thinks no matter who the quarterback is, and they're at home, I can understand that as well. I do think it will be a tight game because I think the Bills' defense is really, really solid, and it should be interesting to see. But I think that Zed Smith and that Vikings defense will be able to get at Case Keenum, and that will lead to the Vikings winning it. You had a point before we move on to the next game.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it. You called out the 2 games in which they have coming up leading into Thanksgiving, when they're actually playing on Thanksgiving against the Lions, but prior to that they play at home to the Browns. This is an NFC-AFC game, so whilst it's not great to lose, you're losing to an NFC team. So, there's no standings essentially that's going to impact them. The only impact really is, and we'll come to the Chiefs game shortly, they're home to the Jags, and with all due respect to the Jags, I think by and large the expectation is the Chiefs will win. You're allowing the Chiefs then to jump back into the number one seed, and we are getting to that stage of the season where we really do have to start talking about the number one seed, and it's such a crucial situation because there's no 1 and 2 seed. There's no bye weeks for 1 and 2 anymore. It's only for the 4 seed. You've also got the opportunity to play 2 home games to get into the Super Bowl. When the Bills won in Kansas City, everybody felt that was a step in the right direction for this Bills team to make sure they are the number one seed come January, and everybody runs to Orchard Park. Well, that may not be the case again. So look, they'll do their utmost to win, but I think they also have to look at the long-term view, which is if Josh Allen doesn't play, why risk him when we really know he's not ready? Because there's bigger games to come later on in the season.
Well, if you're a fan of either team, we are split on the show. Generally, when we're in consensus, that can spell disaster for the team we all go for. So both fans could go into this with optimism, I think. And moving on, then I suppose the next game we're going to look at these are two teams who both kind of enjoyed the week, which is interesting. Obviously, the Lions travel down the road to Chicago to take on the Bears. Brian, the Lions getting a divisional win against their rivals, the Packers, last week. And I think for me, and I understand that this isn't a slight, but the reaction of the Bears fans to last week, you would genuinely think that they had won that game. I get it, because finding your franchise QB is so important. Justin Fields is a really young guy. He's cost controlled, for the next 3.5 years. So this is enormous for them. And it's a Bears team scoring points in November. It's been a while since they have had that. What do you think will happen in this NFC North matchup?
I think the optimism for Bears fans is fair in a way, because we saw so many struggles at the start of the season. I mean, it was only a month ago they played a Thursday night football game against Washington and could only put 7 points up, but they did have drives into the red zone and really should have won that game. But they put up 32 points last week against a strong Dolphins team. They put up 29 the week before that against a strong Cowboys team, and they put up 34 against Patriots team, again, defensively on their day, are very strong. You've rightly called out throughout the course of the past few weeks, they've adjusted the offense eventually, whatever way you want to look at it, to, I suppose, play to the strengths in which Justin Fields has. He's playing on a level which I genuinely didn't believe we would see. They're the first team since 1976 to have 4 games in a row where a combined rushing yards of 225 yards or more. The last team to do that was the Steelers. So we're seeing many attributes to this offense, because they've got the players there, like Montgomery, you've got Herbert, 2 really good running backs, Cole Kmet, the tight end, who slowly getting into it now, but he's starting to really gradually get, he's starting to catch touchdowns, he's fitting into this offense. Darnell Mooney's had a good season. They've Herbert, for example, 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games, a home running back. They're mixing up the players, different players are scoring touchdowns. Okay, it's all balanced with Justin Fields running for 178 yards. I don't think we're going to see that every week. So I can understand why the Bears fans would be more optimistic than even the Lions fans, despite their victory last week, going into this game. Because, look, the storyline last week for that game isn't how the Lions played or how their defense played. It's more about the frailties again of the Green Bay Packers. But I feel we've seen a drop off from the Lions team, in particular the offense. Like, bearing in mind the start of the season, people were lauding Jared Goff for how well he was playing, but they put up 6 points in Dallas a couple of weeks ago. They got shut out. They got shut out in New England. They put up 15 points last week, 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion against Packers defense that's been playing really poor. The worst defense in the league at 32. They're 32nd ranked in the league. Like, Dan Campbell he's under pressure, in my opinion, because there was a lot expected of this team. We obviously were forced to interview the long snapper, and he thought the team was going in the good direction. It looked like that was the case at the start of the season. They kind of looked like where the Bears are now. They were playing really well in games, but losing them. But there was an optimism. That seems to have gone away, in my opinion. I'm with the Bears in this game. I think the Bears will find a way to win. I think it will be, I wouldn't say too high scoring game. I think both teams will put up points because the frailties of both defenses. But I think Justin Fields will again have a really good day and find a way to win this game for the Bears.
Yeah, divisional matchups are always tough, and teams generally raise their games. They're generally close games, and I am really interested to see if Fields can continue this. We've talked about it over the past couple of weeks that they have finally leaned into what he can do. And over the past 3 weeks, I suppose you've talked about it there, Brian, the ability to, to rack up yards in the air and on the ground. So they're finding ways. They're not only leaning into obviously the record last week, but they're averaging over 31 points over the past per game over the past 3 weeks. As a Broncos fan, I look at that and almost weep at that ability. 3 sustained weeks over 30 points. That is quite something. The other concern, I suppose, for me for the Lions is the fact that under Dan Campbell, and you talked about the pressure that he might be under a little bit, the Lions are 0-11-1 on the road. That is not great to be going in against a buoyant kind of Bears team. And the Bears have won 7 of their last 8 against the Lions. I do think it will be close. I can see we've a couple of comments that Owen Hurley thinks the Lions will do it by 4, and I asked him why, and he has put it down to having more tools. It'll be interesting to see if that is the case, because the Packers just seem to be kind of such a shambles at the moment. Was it the Lions defense coming alive? And don't get me wrong, I thought they had a very good game last week, but was that down to Rodgers and the Packers and everything that's going wrong there? I'm going to say that the Bears continue to lean into what Fields has done, and they have a couple of really tough games back to back in December. So I think they're going to need again the victory. I think they'll eke it out. I think this could be a field goal game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions won. I don't think it'd be an enormous shock, but I'm going to say that the Bears do it. And Michael has also gone for the Bears. So if you are a Chicago Bears fan, that should worry you. And Owen Hurley may well be correct in his assessment that the Lions will go on to win this game.
Yeah, Michael is often talking about the Claxton alert for us going for the shock results. I think the Claxton alert has to come when we all start picking teams, because as you said, that tends to go the wrong way generally when we do that, when we're in that position. So 3 Bears, interesting.
Somebody none too happy with the Reggie Bush jersey. Look at that. I cannot see that score. I think no chance on that score. But I suppose the next game, moving on to game 3 then, Brian, we're going to look at the Browns traveling to Miami to take on the 6-3 Dolphins in an AFC matchup. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, on Monday's show, I kind of made the point that I felt that this is the kind of game that the Dolphins will have to have a nitty-gritty win type of game, which they won against the Steelers a few weeks ago, because they've been putting up a lot of points recently. Like we touched on it, 35 last week, 31 the week before against the Lions. But in fairness to the Browns, defensively on their day, they find ways to slow teams down. They did it 2 weeks ago against the Bengals on the Monday Night Football, when we all thought there wouldn't be an adverse reaction to Jamar Chase being out. We thought the Bengals would still find a way to win. They essentially shut Joe Burrow and that offense down throughout the course of the four quarters. Like, the Dolphins are putting up huge numbers. Tyreek Hill, you touched on it last week, offensive player of the year. Outside the quarterbacks, yeah, you can totally put it in Tyreek Hill. 1,100 yards. He's only had 3 touchdowns, interestingly enough. It seems to be, he'll take all the yards, and Jalen Waddle will take all the touchdowns, and we're starting to see the Waddle celebration time and time again. I think they're comfortable with that, because it shows that you want to take Tyreek out of the game, that's fine. We have another player on the other side who's just as explosive and can do so much damage. And he's consistently been a great player since he came into the league and came out of Alabama. Jacoby Brissett had his best game 2 weeks ago. Since he went in there. He did 2 weeks ago what we said he could do to lend a hand for Browns to win games, which is just don't make a mistake, methodical drives, 278 yards, and put themselves in a position to win. Nick Chubb is the second highest running back in terms of yards, rushing yards, behind Saquon Barkley. They're going to need a big game out of him. He's had over 800 yards, 10 touchdowns. That's the type of thing they're going to need to do to slow this juggernaut down, essentially. But it's as much as I think the Browns will find a way to keep it close and a little bit more low scoring than what we've seen recently. I still think this Dolphins team will find a way to get over the line. I don't think it'll be pretty. I think it'll be a lot less low scoring than what we've seen recently. And I compare numbers like Tyreek Hill's put up 1,100 yards, the highest explosive player for the Browns offensively in the wide receiver position. Amari Cooper, he's only 553 yards. I mean, it's literally half the yards. It just shows to show how explosive this Dolphins offense has been. I think they'll get over the line. I think they'll get the win. I don't think it'll be as explosive as what we've seen over the past few weeks. It could be something more along the lines of what we saw on that Sunday Night Football when they beat the Steelers 16-10, something in and around that type of score.
Yeah, it's the Browns, I think, have done well enough, right? And you've talked there about Nick Chubb and kind of complementary football, but I think the issue for the Browns is that that rushing attack is good, but the Browns can struggle against teams that can score points, because how do they keep up with those teams? And we talked about the electricness of this Dolphins offense. I think the Dolphins will have the ability to score points. I think the issue for the Dolphins is they have to they have to score that number of points because their defense has been giving up so many. Now they brought in Bradley Chubb. Can he make a difference? That will be interesting to see. But I think this could be something of a shootout, because I think both of these teams, the defenses haven't been great, and both have, look, the Dolphins have been fantastic on offense. The Browns, in fairness to Jacoby Brissett, have done reasonably well. But I think that they will struggle to score enough points to keep pace with the Dolphins. I think, especially the fact that it is in Miami, and obviously that makes a difference. We have seen the temperature difference earlier this year in terms of the sidelines, and that's a very deliberate ploy by the Dolphins. But look, you leverage every advantage you can get when you're in the NFL. I think this is going to be another game where we go across the board, because I'm also on the Dolphins, as is Michael. If anyone out there is watching and you think that the Browns can do it, interested to hear why, drop a comment in, and we'll look to get it up on the screen. Or is everyone feeling that we know when Tua starts and ends the game, the Dolphins are 6-0? Does that continue? I did have to say I enjoyed Mike McDaniel at the podium and kind of talking about the Justin Fields and asking him to stop and making light of it. In fairness, that was a good, a nice moment. And Keith is joining us, obviously a big Dolphins fan from Cork. And expecting a close game. I think it'll be reasonably close, Keith, certainly. But we are all on the Dolphins, which should probably give you heart palpitations, Keith, because I'm not sure that's a great sign for you. If you're listening on the podcast, this will be the end of this particular section. Please do rate, review, subscribe. It does make a difference to us. And the next game that we are going to discuss is Mr. O'Leary's Giants, who are going to welcome the 1-6-1 Texans. Could this be a trap game for the Giants, Brian?
I thought we were going to be the trap team this season against all these. Not necessarily in this game. It's unusual to hear people discussing a trap game which the Giants should win, and hopefully they don't find a way to throw it away, which has been a great start to the season. Obviously, it's been a difficult week really in New York. They've come back off their bye week and they should be all, despite the difficult defeat in Seattle, they were in the game 10 minutes ago. It was all tied up, and unfortunately, as you discussed when I was away, special team mistakes are key in this league, and if you give too many of them away, it will cost you. And you were expecting like a big bounce back this weekend. McKinney goes off in the bye week, goes off on quad bikes, or whatever you want to call it. Stuff that's in his contract as a waiver that you can't, if you're going to go on them, you're not going to get paid. And it's caused a lot of this. It's been a lot of controversy this week, which I'm sure Brian Dable and Joe Shane are not pleased about, because all they want to do is focus on a game which the Giants really should be winning. I stayed up last week to watch the Texans game against the Eagles on Thursday night, because I was really keen to see this Texans team, because once we look at majority of the highlights and we see them on Red Zone, I was keen to see how good Dameon Pierce was. I was really impressed with him. He's 139 yards last week against the strong Eagles. Defense, it was the second best in the league this year behind Kenneth Walker in terms of yards. But I would say outside of him, there's very little else there. And I don't mean to sound, unfair of the Texans team. I think it's the reality of where they're at. They've only won one game this season, which was against the Jags. They only put up 13 points. On the road, they haven't gone above 20 points in any game this season. I spoke about Davis Mills a couple of weeks ago, in particular the game against the Raiders. He'll play well. He reminds me of Daniel Jones and other young quarterbacks to come into the league. He'll play well for two to three quarters, keep them in the game. But when it comes to the fourth quarter and it's time to really put your marker down and win the game, and the game speeds up, he doesn't have it. And we saw interceptions last week in the second half, and that's the type of stuff we've seen from him. We saw it in Vegas against the Raiders. For the Giants, I mean, there is some bright spots. Like, I know people are going to laugh at this, but Kenny Golladay is coming back this week and he's going to play for the first time in quite a while, and where people just thought that it was time for him to move on, and it looked like he potentially will get traded. He seems to be re-engaged, very focused from what we've seen this week, and maybe he's shook up by the fact that they did get rid of Kadarius Toney. That it isn't against the realms possibility that he will get moved on despite the big contract. Darius Slayton has rebounded as well. Like, we don't have a great core of wide receivers, and people were expecting the Giants to make a move on the trade deadline. They didn't. But at the end of the day, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, Saquon Barkley, with the season they're having, utilising the run game with Daniel Jones, and despite McKinney's absence for the next 4 to 5 weeks, the Giants have very much defensively been the next man up, and they've been really strong all throughout the course of the season against much better quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, etc. I don't see the Giants slipping up. And in previous seasons, with different coaching, I would, but Brian Dable and Wick Martindale and Kafka will scheme up what they need to do to make sure the Giants get over the line in this game and move to 7-2, and then work towards the Lions again next week, which is arguably another very winnable game. So for me, the Giants will win this game. I wouldn't say comfortably on Sunday, but I certainly think they'll win by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, I think as long as the Giants don't underestimate the Texans and they do their job, they should win. The reality is that this is the Texans team giving up 180 yards on the ground, and as you've rightly pointed out, you've got Saquon, you've got Daniel Jones. I imagine this could be very similar in ways to the Texans-Eagles game, where the Texans will, and I'm a big fan of him. He showed, I think, in the offseason, and you rightly called it out, Dameon Pierce has been the shining light for him. I mean, his college coaches, I do not know what they were thinking not playing him. And Wink Martindale was very, very complimentary, as you said. Like, he did. And I think it wasn't a Bill Belichick type piece, where when Bill Belichick spends, minutes talking about an opposing player, that he's overdoing it. The lady protests too much. But I think, in fairness to Wink Martindale, because you can only say good things about this kid. He has put the Texans on his back. He is the one thing that is carrying them. And realistically, for the Texans, this is all about, kind of talked about it on the show before, finding out what they are going to do. Next, who's going to be around next year. They're going to move on from Davis Mills. I think they will approach it in the same way as the Eagles. And while the Giants don't have the receiving core that the Eagles do, I still would expect the Giants to win this one. But this is another consensus game, though. Lots of consensus games this week. So Michael is also on the Giants. Does that give you pause or concern, Brian?
He's picked them twice this season, would you believe? Colin, they've won 6 games, and he was slagging me earlier in the season for not picking the Eagles much. He's only picked the Giants twice this season. Thankfully, in the 2 games in which he did pick them, they won both games, and they were both at home, which was the Panthers and the Bears game. Similar type of game to the Bears. Expectations is the Giants will win. Won't be pretty, but they should find a way to get over the line. No, I'm happy that Michael recognises that this really is a game in which the Giants should get over the line.
And for any of you watching, is there a potential path to victory for Houston in any way, shape, or form? Or is this an opportunity for Saquon to maybe put a real stamp on certainly comeback player of the year, potentially offensive player of the year if he really puts a marker down, if Saquon was to go off for 150 yards or so? That would be a standout game, and a lot of times it can come down to maybe a memorable game for people. Brian, the next game these are 2 teams who are like both obviously storied franchises, great history. Neither are where they would like to be at the moment. The Saints travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers, the 3-6 Saints, who I would say don't have a franchise QB, have not a whole lot in cap space, and obviously have given away a number of their draft picks as well. Their travel to the Steelers, who are trying to find out if they have a franchise QB. But a Steelers team who have never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin, but are now currently 4 games under 500. Can they find a way to change that on Sunday?
I believe they will. I'll say now, I think the Steelers will win this game. This season, for me, we said it in our season preview, I didn't feel this would be a strong season for the Steelers. I said it would be the 4th season in which they have a losing record under Mike Tomlin. But it was down more so to the fact that at some stage, we spoke about when we felt Trubisky would be taken off the field and announced their 1st round pick, Kenny Pickett, to come in. And Kenny Pickett's had a difficult start, I would say. Like me and you, I think we're in lockstep. We felt just put him in at the start of the season. And he gradually would have matured throughout the course of the season. They might be in a better position now. He's had some difficult games. He's had to play some really strong sides in Buffalo. He's had to go into Miami. Like you touched on it last week on Twitter, the great response from Mike Tomlin as he was going off the field in Miami there a couple of weeks back. Don't worry about it, better days are to come. And I think the better day might be this Sunday, because I watched the Saints game on Tuesday. I watched it in its entirety, and I was really disappointed with how the Saints played offensively. And now it looks like they're completely banjacks on the offensive line. They're moving their left guard to centre. They're moving the right guard to right tackle. Literally, it's going to be a complete swap around on Sunday. Already in a situation where we've seen Andy Dalton struggle to get outside the pocket where the pressure comes, and it's not sustainable. He's in a position where he's getting sacked, and we spoke on the show about the fact that he's ahead of Winston, and it looks like he will remain ahead of Winston. For me, that's a concern. Taysom Hill, when we were in London, we were travelling back, and we saw last year how explosive he is, whether he's playing as a receiver, quarterback, running back. He had 3 scoring touchdowns against Seattle a couple of weeks ago. He had 1 in London, and he threw a touchdown against Seattle as well. And since then, he's been non-existent. I mean, in a team that's struggling, would you not be best served to use one of your most attributes in terms of Taysom Hill and what he brings to that offense? Landry's out for 5 games in the defense. Davenport went off injured on Monday. Lattimore's out. There's so many injuries. They're completely banged up. They are where they are because of we felt the Saints would have a reasonably good season, but they've had so many injuries. It's hard to see how they can win games. And the one thing with Mike Tomlin, in particular when they play at home, they will do their utmost to put themselves in a position to win games, whether they get over the line. Like, most of their defeats at home have been close games. Like, they lost to the Jets, they beat the Bucks, they've a couple of weeks back there was another game which it was tight and they got over the line. So I see Steelers winning this game on Sunday. I think I don't even think it'll be close. I think they'll find a way to win this comfortably enough.
I don't know if it will be comfortable, but I do think that the Steelers absolutely have their backs against the wall, and they need to find a way to win. I think if they were to fall to 2-7, it would be very difficult for them to pick themselves up. It is you have to give young QBs time. And again, we saw the Bears last year with Justin Fields. Um, we've seen the Eagles with Hurts. You got to give them a chance to see if they're really it. You got to put weapons around them. I think the O line probably hasn't helped with Pickett, and I would love to have seen um, Pickens probably do a little bit more. He'll probably should be targeted a bit more now, obviously with Chase Claypool going elsewhere to Chicago. I think it is a coin flip game. Honestly, it's one of those where we've seen the league. I think I saw Schefter tweet about it during the week that the average winning is just over 9 points. It's certainly below 10. I think it was maybe 9.73 was what I saw him tweet during the week. It's the lowest it has been, and that is quite telling. And I think this will be a close game because I think both of these teams are really struggling offensively. I don't imagine this will be one of those high octane games. This feels like a world away from that Chiefs Rams game that really stands out from a few years ago. This might be the antithesis of that. So I'm going to say that I think that the Mike Tomlin finds a way to get the Steelers to a victory, but Michael is going for the New Orleans Saints. So we are not in lockstep on this one. And Stephen is going for a tie. Yeah, you might well be right there, Stephen. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that was to certainly go into overtime. And who knows what might happen at that stage. We will end this section of the podcast here. Again, thanks for listening. Please do rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and hit the like button. So the next game will be the Denver Broncos, the 3-5 Denver Broncos, who won in London, then had a bye week and somehow ended up more injured after the bye week, traveling to Tennessee to take on the 5-3 Titans, who had a loss against the Chiefs. Brian, how does this one play out?
I would suggest this is the most difficult game of the weekend to pick. I genuinely have gone back and forth on this game. I can see so many reasons as to why the Titans should win this. They're at home. They've got Derrick Henry. He ran another 2 touchdowns in last weekend. Previous week against Texas, he ran 2 in. He's averaging around 120 yards a game at the moment. He's really stepped up from what I would consider a very slow start to the season when he was only averaging around 80 to 85 yards a game. But it doesn't look like Tannehill is going to play again. That's the general consensus. He's not going to play. It's going to be Willis again. And that concerns me because I don't believe it's sustainable. He only had 1 throw in the second half against the Texans. The game was out of hand at that stage, so it wasn't anything to be concerned about. And in fairness, they got the game into overtime last weekend. But I did say on the show on Monday that they were in overtime because of the coach in which they have, Mike Vrabel. He's a fantastic coach, and he put them in a position to be in that game throughout the course, even to the very end. And it took a pass from Mahomes. Fantastic drive and fantastic play, 36 yards rushing, including running in a touchdown and the 2-point conversion to get the game into overtime. Didn't have 1 forced down from 7 minutes left in the second quarter until overtime. That's a huge concern. This offense for me, if Derrick Henry is stifled, and in fairness to this Broncos defense, throughout, despite the frailties of the season, despite your frustrations and Michael's, the defense has been consistent outside of maybe the game I would say, in Vegas, where the Raiders did a number on them. Throughout the course of the season, they've been consistently. Patrick Surtain is shut down. We saw they had a slow start in London against the Jags, but the second half, with the exception of 1 drive, they completely shut down the Jags. I could see a scenario where the Broncos shut down this Titans team again, and then it's in the hands of Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, for me, has had a slight re-emergence. The game in London, I thought he played after a slow start with the interception early on. He came back to himself in the second half. There was more expansive plays called, and some big throws deep. I think there's a great find in Greg Dodge, the tight end. He had 87 yards in London. I think he's starting to kind of have a bit of connection. We saw him score a touchdown as well in LA against the Chargers. I'm going to go with the shock. Well, is it a shock? I'm not sure. It's a shock in the sense of the Titans are the favourites, but I'm not bought into this offense. We've seen two teams over the past few weeks slow them down, including a Texans team in the second half where the Titans were struggling against them as well. So I'm going to go with the Broncos to go in and find a way to win. I don't think it'll be pretty, but I think Russell Wilson will find a way to get it over the line. Coming off the bye week, for me, it's their last chance to learn, really, to maintain an opportunity to be in the running for a wild card. If they lose this game with with other games coming up, I mean, the Broncos still have to play the Chiefs twice, got to play the Chargers again, and then obviously the Raiders in itself is always a difficult game, no matter what the record of the Raiders, when you'll be at that game in a few weeks. So I think this is a big weekend for the Broncos, and I do genuinely think they'll get the win.
I think the frustration for Broncos fans hasn't been the defense, which has been stellar. It has been the offense, and it has been the fact that the defense has been great or very good for the last number of years, but stalling on offense this year. And talked about it before, but this year the Broncos defense, despite Vic Fangio not being there, and despite the fact that people said that the defense would take a step back, that hasn't been the case. The defense has actually been better than it was under Vic Fangio, more aggressive, more takeaways. One of the most startling stats that I saw, and look, this is the midway point. It could change. Obviously, the Broncos have to face Patrick Mahomes twice. But no defense in NFL history has allowed less than 9 yards per completion over the course of a season. The Broncos, through 8 games, are allowing 8.5 yards per completion. So the defense is more than holding up its end of the bargain. The question is, can Russell Wilson find a way to spark the offense into light? Some interesting stats this week as well around the Broncos O-line, which has actually played pretty well, which would lead you to, ask more questions of the running backs. The Broncos seem to have kind of acquired a collection of the of guys who've been elsewhere and have now moved over to the Broncos. It'll be interesting to see maybe what they can do. I think if both of these teams were at full strength, the Broncos will be out without KJ Hamler and probably Justin Simmons. But the Titans, and talked about Mike Vrabel, is a fantastic coach, and his ability to wring every ounce from his troops is quite something. Burks looks like he'll be back. That will help. But 6 of Tennessee's 7 starters on the defensive front were on the injury report this week. Jeffrey Simmons is still in a boot. He was in a boot today. Yeah. That is a huge loss. If he can't play, I think he's a game wrecker. I think he is up there with Donald, with Chris Jones, as the ability to just take over a game. And for that reason, I just think I think this will be a bit like a few of the games this week. The Saints and the Steelers, I don't expect this will be high scoring. I think this game will be won in the trenches, but I think the Titans are really beat up at the moment. So I am going to go with the Broncos to sneak it. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if this was a 15-12 type game. I really think it could be that type of game.
It has a feel to it, all right.
Yeah, that could well be it. Michael is also going for the Broncos. So if you are a Titans fan watching this, there is plenty of hope for you in that respect. I also see that the Danger Witch is now officially available. And a lot of talk this week about quarterbacks wearing wristbands, but apparently Russell Wilson will be wearing one this weekend. Moving on then to the last of the 6 o'clock games, and that is the Jags at the Chiefs. Brian, how is this one going to play out?
There's a storyline or two behind this game. I mean, Doug Peterson and Andy Reid have such a close connection. Andy Reid gave Doug Peterson his first opportunity in the league as a backup with the Packers. He gave him his first opportunity to be a starter as well with the Eagles, and then he brought him back to be in the coaching staff. And then from there, when he left, Doug Peterson was promoted to be the head coach, and obviously went on to win the Super Bowl for the Eagles. So um, there's a lot of close connections there, and I suppose Andy Reid is at the stage of his career now where he has ties with a lot of teams and a lot of players, and they have matched up once before. The Chiefs came out, probably no surprise, the Chiefs came out winning that game 17-9 when they played the Eagles a number of years ago when Doug Peterson was the head coach. But I mean, we were talking about that game in Wembley 2 weeks ago, and we spoke about the fact that Travis Etienne, and within that week was when Robinson got traded to the Jets, and we were all saying, he didn't have any snaps against the Giants, and then he got traded, and we were saying it was a bit of a surprise. It was an immediate trade, having the Jets lost Brees Hall, and we saw Robinson being so effective in the game in LA. But what we didn't realise was what they had in Travis Etienne. He's been so explosive. He did a number in so many games, and he did a number on the Broncos, to be honest, and he came out the wrong side of it. We still question why he wasn't handed the ball from a yard out to go in and run a touchdown. They didn't make that mistake, funny enough, last week in a crucial time. They made sure they gave him the ball. For me, he's the one. He's the bright spot here. We talk about Trevor Lawrence, but everything for me with this Jags offense goes to Etienne. They have to get him on the field and keep Chiefs off the field, methodical drives, because the Chiefs haven't played well on offense at times this season. Patrick Mahomes, and you rightly called out last night, has to be up there for the MVP. I mean, last week he had 77 yards rushing. He had 63 of them. He had the 36-yard rush on the last drive. And we spoke on Monday's show about when the Chiefs don't play well, and Patrick Mahomes is deemed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, that it's the toughness, it's the mental toughness to go and win a game like that. And that was proven again last week. He had 445 yards thrown last week. He threw 43 of 63 attempts. I mean, essentially they gave up on the run game. It wasn't balanced offense, and they still found a way to get over the line. And against a really strong defense in the Titans. He's unbeaten, I believe, in November. He's had 10 wins in a row in November throughout the course of his career. I don't see that changing on Sunday. I think this might be a game, and it'll probably, growing away at me, that Kadarius Toney, saw little snippets of him on Monday, immediately coming off an injury, which for some reason seemed to be holding back his Giants career. He was able to get himself ready to play immediately for the Chiefs. I think we might see a breakout game for him this week. And you rightly called out the fact that this offense has been spread around to so many players, and we were wondering, would the loss of Tyreek Hill unbalance this team? In fact, it's they've re-emerged in a different way, in a different light, and everybody's getting their hands on the ball. I could see a game on Sunday where Kadarius Toney has his breakout game in the NFL at long last, and he might get a couple of touchdowns. But for me, it's a Chiefs win, and they'll roll to 7-2 come Sunday evening.
Yeah, it's difficult to look beyond the Chiefs. For the Jags, look, anything is possible in the NFL. I think that's really important. We've seen plenty of shocks, and if a team underestimates them or if they look beyond the week, you can absolutely get caught. And look, the Chiefs have gotten caught. Everyone has gotten caught in the past, but Kelsey is having one of those seasons. He had another 100-yard game. He now has 32. So he equals Rob Gronkowski for the most 100-yard games by a tight end. But we've also seen Travis Kelsey earlier this year, was it 25 yards and 4 touchdowns? So you can have those type of games as well. And the Chiefs just seem to find a way. We've talked about Mahomes, the magician. He makes, the magical look mundane at this point. I think the Chiefs should show up, and they need to take care of business. For them, it's all about securing the number 1 seed. They want the AFC to have to go through Kansas City. They do not want it to have to go through Buffalo. Nobody wants to have to go to Buffalo to play a playoff game. That means taking care of business. They did it last week. They found a way to beat the Titans. They should be able to take care of business as well. For the Jags, it's about improving. You talked about Travis Etienne. He was electric against the Broncos. He's like he is. There's a lot of talk over the years, about different players and kind of the human joystick. He could be the next kind of human joystick as such. His ability to get to the outside and find space and be so slippery is fantastic. But I am going to say that the Kansas City Chiefs will win this game. And Michael is also going with the Chiefs. So we are all in on the Chiefs. So maybe that means that the Jags will shock the world. We will have to wait and see on that one. And that will end this segment of the podcast as we end the 6 p.m. games. Please do rate, review, subscribe. It is all very much appreciated. Moving on to the later games, I suppose. Brian, the next game has, both of these teams, my goodness. I like the Colts have had a week, look, there you would say the Colts have had a week unlike any other, and then obviously the Commanders being the Commanders, but the Raiders having a season like they're so bad that Blake Martinez has decided to retire mid-season. Um, which way is this game going?
God, it's you're right. I mean, the Raiders have been kind of kept off the boil this week because of all the other stuff that's going on within the league. I mean, the Colts thing is it's a fiasco in itself, and Josh McDaniels has to be under pressure. And I know Mark called out on the show on Monday that they're joined at the hip, essentially, that they brought in a GM and a head coach, but we have seen GMs in the past, avoid being let go, and the owner just says enough's enough for that head coach. I mean, he's in a no-win situation for me on Sunday, Josh McDaniels. If they lose the game, they've lost to a team and a coach that has never coached in the league, nor has he had any even experience as a background coach in the league. And if they win the game, it'll be, well, you should have won that game anyway. So he's not hiding to nothing on Sunday. He's lost Hunter Renfro. For 4 weeks, he's gone on IR. They've lost Waller, essentially, now. Like, Waller has been non-existent this season, so he's gone on IR. And they're reliant on Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Mac Hollins. And, it's just not working for them, and they're finding ways. We spoke last night about the mental toughness in this league and the mental resolve in which this Raiders team had last year to put themselves in a position to the playoffs. That's not there under this coaching staff. They've given up 3 17-point leads this season. And whenever about losing 17-point leads in Arrowhead, because we've seen many a team go in there and hit the ground running only to be caught up by the Chiefs. But last week against the Jags, in not too much of a difficult environment, like with all due respect to Jags, going into play in Jacksonville, 9 times out of 10, it's like a home game, because there's so many fans that travel or fans living in that area that support that particular team. And they still found ways to lose. Derek Carr is not. I picked the Raiders to go to playoffs. Derek Carr is not playing at the level we saw towards the back end of last season. He's struggling. His offensive line is struggling. And then this Colts team, I looked at the stats of Monday's game. You were talking about Judon last night. Judon had a field day on last Sunday against this Colts team. They had 13 drives in which they punted every single time. There's no consistency. Jonathan Taylor looks like he's going to come back. That's a great sign for them to have him back, because he can steady the ship essentially and keep them, try to have these long drives. I'd ask the question, the owner is I probably know the answer, but the owner's made a decision essentially to get rid of Matt Ryan out of the team. What's to say Jeff Saturday doesn't turn around now and say, we're best served having Matt Ryan as the quarterback? Does the owner turn around to him and say, no, that's not going to happen? Because right now, this young lad who's come into the team, we saw it against Washington, they got themselves in the position to win the game, not because of him, because of how well their defense played on the day. He didn't do anything last weekend. They're not going to win with him a quarterback, unfortunately. I think the Raiders are fortunate they're landing into this situation this week where there's so much upheaval with the Colts that they're going to win this game, but I don't think it'll change the manner of how their season is going to progress. The Raiders to win, I wouldn't say a blowout, but I think we're going to have to see a major performance from the Colts team. And we don't even know if the Colts players are going to be bought into Jeff Saturday. We spoke on Monday about the fact that there's many a coach there that with coaching experience would have felt that they were in a position to be given the opportunity to re-energise their careers and potentially get an opportunity to coach again in the league, and they've been bypassed to bring in Jeff Saturday because of previous relationships. And it doesn't bode well when you see the owner at press conference this week and he's talking gobbledygook about we've been in the upper echelons of winning in this league for so many years, and I don't even know what he knows what he's talking about anymore. So for me, probably getting off the point here. Raiders to win the game.
Well, I don't know if you can get off the point because it has just been such a strange week for both of these teams to a lesser extent the Raiders, but this Colts situation is unprecedented in ways. You know, we hear that Jim Irsay first reached out on Sunday to Jeff Saturday about becoming interim HC, passing over a whole host of people. So now, yeah, it's a head coach who's never coached in the league, the play caller who's never called plays, the rookie QB who's yet to win a game, although and you hinted at it like, yeah, it seems to have been the owner's decision. Matt Ryan was at training today for the first time in 3 weeks. So who knows what might happen? But it's kind of impossible to look at the situation with the Colts and look how the season has gone, and look at the money that they are spending on the O line. And I mean, it just some of it is truly baffling about just how bad they have been. It will be interesting. It's an experiment to parachute a coach or a guy who has never coached beyond the high school level. And certainly, you know, the noises coming out of the Colts today were there were PR noises. It's what you expected. It's a tougher regime. They're working hard, but then you hear what it was that like, oh, the offense ran a play and it didn't go well, so he stopped it and he told them to do it again, and they did it. They did it well, and then he said, well, why didn't you do that the first time? I mean, look, these are grown men, many of whom have played in the league a long time. I don't know how that's going to wash with them. Could the Colts win this? Certainly they could, because things are clearly not right in Vegas. As a Broncos fan, I can't say I'm particularly surprised. I saw with my own two eyes what Josh McDaniels did in Denver. Honestly, there were people in Denver who to this day will tell you that Bill Belichick sent Josh McDaniels to Denver to be a sleeper agent to destroy the franchise from the inside. Um, they will tell you that, and they will earnestly believe that to be the case, and that he should never have gotten another head coaching job. The Colts also have a reason, particularly for Jim Irsay and for Chris Ballard, to want to win this. Have Josh McDaniels having left them at the altar. Remember that happened. Like, you know, he was all set to take over the job. They had his coordinators in situ. Everything was in place. And then at the 11th hour, he decided not to. So I would say that, you know, that's a grudge match going in there. The Raiders also got rid of yet another first round pick this week. I mean, it was five, I think five, certainly five of the last six, if not
Five of the last six are no longer on the roster.
yeah. I mean, that is spectacular to look at that. These are two franchises in desperate need of stability, but like stability only when the right people are in place. And the problem is, I think in both instances, the owners have been over involved. The Raiders looked under their interim head coach last year. They looked a lot more stable, but they decided, you know, he wasn't a big enough name perhaps, and they were moving on from him. Now they'll have a decision to make, I think, at the end of the season about their head coach and their QB. Though if they were to lose this game, I could see Josh McDaniels losing his job if they were to lose to the Colts. I wouldn't see a way, as you said, for him to remain in situ. For that reason, I'm going to go with the Raiders, but I don't say that with any conviction whatsoever. I other than the fact that they have people in place who have called plays previously. Should that count for something? Yes. Will it? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
I think for the Colts to salvage the season, they should bring Matt Ryan back in. I know Matt Ryan has been struggling. He's had some reasonably good games. He played well against the Jags there a few weeks ago. I mean, this is the thing. It wasn't like his performances poor week in, week out. There was some bright spots, not a lot. I'm not dismissing that he was quite poor against several teams this season. But when you're in a situation where you have a coach who's never coached in the league before, and you're also then trying to build a trust of a relationship with a quarterback that's not played in the league for very long, that to me is only a recipe for disaster. You should be leaning on an experienced quarterback like Matt Ryan to come back in, and they just have to take the bumps in the road at the season and essentially just accept that this season is not going to be what they expected. And there was large expectations for this team to be in the playoffs. We all picked them to win the division. It hasn't materialised, but if they want to put themselves in a position to win games, I think that has to be with Matt Ryan at quarterback, not a rookie who looks like, unfortunately, he's out of his depth, and that's unfair on the kid, but that's the reality of the situation. I think they'd be best there bringing Matt Ryan back in, but the owner is dead against it, so it's probably unlikely to happen because I'm sure Jeff Saturday is happy he's been in the position that he's in, but he's not going to rock the boat too much, in my opinion.
My understanding is there are contract implications as well if Ryan plays, and sometimes that can feature into a decision. So I don't know. I would agree. Like I can understand maybe moving on from a veteran QB when it's not really going well. If you have a real kind of up and coming rookie who you believe in, but I don't know whether they really believe in this guy or if it is just a contract piece.
If they believed in him, Colin, he would have been in. With Wentz gone, he would have been in. They would have said, look, Wentz is gone because we recognise this kid is now, we're holding this kid back and he has to play. That's not the case. They went out and did the trade with the Falcons because they thought Matt Ryan was going to be the final kind of piece to this offense, which is good. And they can be really explosive, and they thought he still felt it was the Falcons holding him back more so than Matt Ryan holding the Falcons back.
Michael is also going for the Raiders, but Stephen thinks that McDaniels is a total spoofer and perhaps that Indy can win a close one. I'm not going to disagree on McDaniels being a spoofer. Could Indy win it? Yeah, but I'm gonna lean Raiders. And
but he's made a good point. Nick Foles is there. Why aren't they utilising Nick Foles? I mean, Nick Foles can hold his own in this league.
There's clearly stuff going on behind the scenes. That maybe we're not privy to. So
I don't think any of us ever will be.
No, well, maybe in the future we will get to hear it. Okay, the next game that we're going to talk about is a team who, well, when Dak Prescott was asked about OBJ earlier, he looked like the Cheshire Cat with the grin on his face. And the Dallas Cowboys will travel to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers. What's going to happen in this one, Brian?
You're not saying things that I want to hear, Colin. You're suggesting that Odell Beckham is going to Dallas. Still holding out hope that we might see a return to New York. Doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. This is an interesting game, and again, many storyline. Okay, the Packers this season, like this throughout the course of any season, is a fantastic game, and it feels like it's been quite a while since the Packers played in Lambeau. They've been on the road, and obviously they were in London. It'd be interesting to see how the fans react to. They're coming off 5 defeats in a row. Will they be fully behind them on Sunday? Mike McCarthy's coming back to Green Bay, if I'm right in saying it's his first time coming back as head coach of the Cowboys, and there's a road near the stadium called the Mike McCarthy Way, and I'm sure he'd be keen to have his way on Sunday. And I was interested to watch the sound bites throughout the course of the week leading up to this game, because interesting to see people who are still around what they say about Mike McCarthy, because let's not forget he did win a Super Bowl for them in Dallas, as it happens, back in 2011 against the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers said this week he's gritty on the outside and he's a soft little teddy on the inside, is how he referred to Mike McCarthy. Now, bearing in mind that one of the reasons why Mike McCarthy was shown the door was because their relationship had completely broken down between him and Rodgers, and then Rodgers is coming out and saying all the nice things. If I was LaFleur, I'd be kind of nervous to hear that type of stuff, because what's he saying about LaFleur in the background? It's a rare one, because like Zeke Elliott, who's had a reasonably strong season for the Cowboys, got injured against the Lions a few weeks ago, and he's going to play with a knee brace. He's still actually questionable whether he'll even play on Sunday, but if he does, he'll play with a knee brace. Tony Pollard, I mean, we've been saying it, Cowboys fans have been saying it, it's the Pollard show now. He should be playing. We saw a little bit more explosiveness with the Cowboys' offense against the Bears a few weeks ago, but how much of that is down to the Bears' defense being quite poor. They didn't play overly great against the Lions the week prior to that when Dak did come back into the game. What we've seen now with this Cowboys offense this season, no matter who the quarterback is, it's not the explosiveness of what we're used to. It's more methodical. And I see that again on Sunday against the Packers defense, which in fairness has had struggles over the past few weeks, and the indiscipline that we're seeing. They've lost quite a few players this week. There's a series of injuries with this Packers team now, both offensively and defensively, which is really cruel to them because coming into this game, you want all your players available. This Cowboys defense is so good. Micah Parsons and this front seven. If they get to Rodgers, it's going to be a long day. The Packers offense is 17th in the league. Sorry, it's 27th in the league offensively. Bearing in mind this has been a top 5 explosive offense over the past few years. To see them, no matter who's playing there with Devontae Adams not there anymore, to see them averaging only 17 points a game throughout the course of the season, 27th in the league. If they put up only 17 points on Sunday, do I think it's enough to beat a Cowboys team? I don't. I think the Cowboys will win this game.
Yeah, you mentioned the Packers' injury, Brian. They had 17 players listed on the 18 players listed on the injury report yesterday, 17 today with Christian Watson coming off. That list includes Aaron Rodgers with the right thumb. It includes David Bakhtiari, includes Mason Crosby. We know, obviously, Gary is placed on IR and Romeo Dubes is out for an extended period. Mercedes Lewis is on there. Aaron Jones is on there. Things are clearly, both in terms of injuries, both in terms of play, both in terms of the way, just the chemistry in the team. We saw, Aaron Rodgers talk last week about the offense going out together and having a great time and building chemistry, and we didn't see any of the results of that against the Lions. I can't go against this Cowboys defense, which has been stellar. And yeah, fair point about Zeke. We got another meddling owner. Sometimes owners should just sit on their hands and let the coaches get on with it. For me, I'm going to say that the Cowboys get the victory in this one. And this is a consensus game because Michael is also going with the Cowboys.
This has to be like a siege mentality type game for the Packers. Like us against the world here. No one expects us to win. We're back in Lambeau. Crowd get into it. Keep the game close. Get yourself into the fourth quarter, and hopefully things will go right on the day. And we've seen that throughout the course of the season. There's been many a shock result. Like if they were to win on Sunday, yeah, it would be a shock. We wouldn't be sitting here Monday even saying it's the biggest shock of the season or anything like it, or even the biggest shock of the weekend. But it's just the problem is that Mark called it out on the show on Monday. Like this is where you need your quarterback to rally the troops. And we've seen time and time again that Rodgers just doesn't seem to be that type of player, doesn't seem to have that type of mentality with his team. I wouldn't necessarily say he's throwing people under the bus. I know Fred, who watched the show, referred to it during the week with his Pat McAfee interview, saying he felt he was distancing himself from a poor performance. I actually didn't. I felt he put his hands up and accepted that he was responsible for some of those interceptions. But are we going to see that on Sunday? Are we going to see Rodgers rally this team into a position where he can win the game? I just don't see it, unfortunately. And I think the Cowboys are 6-2 for a reason, and I think come Sunday 7-2 as well.
Brian, the next game we're going to discuss is an NFC West matchup where the 3-6 Cardinals, who featured on Hard Knocks this week, travel to LA to take on the 3-5 Rams, who lost in the closing seconds to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers last weekend. Which of these teams can get their 4th win of the season?
Colin, I was struggling to put points together for this game today and notes, and I come to some of the analysis, some of the stats of both teams. Right now, we don't know if Matthew Stafford's going to play. He's in concussion protocol. Colin Murray has now since been put on the injury report as well by the Cardinals. Don't think it's as severe as the Matthew Stafford situation, but there is a concern that he may not be available. And at this stage, with Stafford still in concussion protocol, bearing in mind the experience of what we've seen throughout the course of the season with Tua, the scrutiny around the league on this I struggle to see how he'll play on Sunday. He might get cleared tomorrow, but again, will he be fully cleared and will he be in a position to go out and play that game? It's been a difficult one for the Rams. Like last Sunday, they had 13 drives in which they punted off 9. They can't get anything going on offense. The game which they won against the Panthers even a few weeks ago, when it was the fourth game in which Steve Wilkes went in as head coach. I mean, they won that game late and it looked a lot more comfortable than it was. They've just struggled throughout the course of the season. And their offensive line, I mean, they put up a notice on the screen last week in the Bucks game around the 5 guys that were there last season. There's only 2 of them there now. This offensive line hasn't gelled together. Matthew Stafford is struggling. Cooper Kupp, yeah, he's still a great player, but they've no running game. Henderson and Akers, Akers was due to be released or traded. It hasn't materialised. Now, obviously, he's back in with a chance of playing. The defense has struggled, this season. And when I say they struggle, like you look at the numbers, they haven't given up huge points, but they're just not the defense we've seen in the past. They're not getting to the quarterback. They're not getting the sacks. Aaron Donald's having a very quiet season. And the one thing I would say about the Cardinals, and look, I'm not very high up in the Cardinals, we spoke about it Monday. Like, offensively, they are playing a little bit better than what we've seen. Like, they put up 21 points last week against a good, strong Seattle defense to what we've seen this season. 26 the week before that, and then, okay, there's a few pick sixes in there, but huge numbers against Saints, 42 the previous game. They are putting up points, and I believe if they put up anything in between 24 and 30 points on Sunday, they'll win this game. And I'm going to side with the Cardinals. I think they beat them there last season. They lost the playoff game. They have the experience going in there. It isn't daunting, with all due respect, because of the difference, the imbalance of fans there. So I'm going to go with the Cards. I don't even know if they're not the favourites. Is it a shock? I wouldn't say it is. Cardinals for me.
Yeah, this is certainly a game where you're looking at it, and they both have been so disappointing. And obviously, for the Cardinals, a lot was exposed on Hard Knocks, and Josh Winefuss, who we've had on the show with us, has kind of tweeting out some of his observations, and what he had said was it was going to be interesting to get a peek at, how Cliff Kingsbury operates behind closed doors and how he deals with stress, because he doesn't give away anything in terms of in front of the media. And one of the things that he pointed out was that the Hard Knocks neglected to mention that he had actually been fired by Texas Tech. So if you were watching Hard Knocks, you would not know that. You would think that the Cardinals had just picked him up from Texas Tech, and not that they had fired him because his teams tended to collapse in the second half of the seasons. And obviously we saw or got to hear the exchange between Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, which, the frustration, you can sense it, that it's there, and Vance Joseph's frustration. And I don't know. To me, I look at it, and I can see how both teams can win this game, because you've rightly pointed out the Cards can score points. But I just think the wheels are coming off there, right? Hopkins has come back, but him and Murray clearly aren't on the same page. But Baker isn't there, and I know Hopkins. Kyler Murray was on the practice field today, so he should be okay to go. In some ways, I almost wonder if Stafford being out would nearly be a blessing in disguise for the Rams, to give them a change, to do something, because they desperately need a spark. To me, the Rams need this more, because they have invested so much into the win now, in bringing back Aaron Donald, in bringing back Ramsey. I could definitely coin flip, but I'm going to say that Sean McVay manages to find a way for them to win. But again, this is one where I'm calling it with I was waiting until right now to make a call on that, because I genuinely didn't know which of the teams are like a total coin toss. Michael has not given me a pick for this particular game. So I don't know which way he's going, but we are split 50-50, Brian.
John Walford was the backup quarterback for the Rams. He played, I believe, last season when Stafford stepped out of it, and he played reasonably well. I think it might have been the game in Seattle. He played reasonably well. Then he got a concussion and had to leave the game. So once he was in there, he played reasonably well. It'd be interesting if he does play on Sunday, what the reaction is offense, because there's a lot of people that feel, and we spoke about it very early in the offseason, the fact that Stafford had this operation on his elbow. Everybody was, as you said, declaring it as nothing's wrong, he's back, he's 100%. It's clearly been a concern for them throughout the course of the season. I wonder, would he give them a bit of a spark if he was to play? Will he be able to do it consistently over the course of the season? I'm not sure, but in a game where they need to win, it's a divisional game. Maybe it is one of those games that they will find a way to win if they play the backup as opposed to Stafford, who seems to be struggling. But it's like anything in this league. If your offensive line can't protect the quarterback, it doesn't really matter who's your quarterback.
Yeah, very, very true. So the final game, Brian, that we are going to preview this evening, Sunday Night Football. It sees the two of the Californian teams. The Chargers will travel to face the San Francisco 49ers. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, I was trying to get a check today to see where we're at with this Chargers offense, because we spoke about it Monday, spoke about it prior to last Sunday's game, in which we both picked the Falcons, and a lot of that was down to not so much how Herbert is playing, but the fact that Keenan Allen was out. It looks like he's going to be out again. Doesn't seem to be any feedback or information on when Williams is coming back. And right now, for me, this offense is struggling. And Eckler, without Eckler right now, where would they go offensively? Everett, the tight end, he started off the season well. You got Palmer, you got Carter. For me, they just haven't hit the ground running this season. There's been too many stop starts where the team look like they're getting things together offensively. And you're going up against the 49ers team. 2 weeks ago, prior to their bye, they went into LA. And again, okay, it was a struggling Rams team, but McCaffrey had that big breakout game. And it's a marquee trade. It's a significant trade. And we need to see this 49ers team start to kind of up the gears here now going into the second part of the season, because the division is within reach, with all due respect to how well Seattle played. They're only one game behind in the division. And a lot of people felt this was 49ers division to win at the start of the season, despite the fact that the Rams had won the Super Bowl. It's Jimmy's team right now. And I've made my feelings very clear about this head coach and how he's supposed to be the defensive master that's come in to correct this Chargers defense, and it hasn't materialised so far. They're very poor against the run, and they're going up against McCaffrey, who's starting to kind of get his feet under the ground in San Francisco. Come back off the bye week. Chargers have been away in Atlanta playing. They've travelled back. I think the 49ers are going to come back fresh. Sunday Night Football, we saw it a few weeks ago. They played a Monday Night Football against the Rams. They were coming off, I think it might have been a mini bye at that stage. They won that game. I expect the 49ers to win this game on Sunday as well.
Yeah, you certainly have made your feelings about Brennan Staley clear. Personally, I put almost more the blame on Joe Lombardi, who I would like to see in The Hague for crimes against Justin Herbert, because the way in which that offense plays is mind-numbing. You would genuinely think that they had some kind of third string QB in the way in which they don't allow Herbert to throw the ball down the field, and it's just it's infuriating, really. To me, the 49ers obviously losing another player on defense to injury, and a really unfortunate one, with their cornerback going out. I think he has had, is it 10 serious injuries that I read there or thereabouts. He's only played 40 or so games, and super talented. But they just unfortunately seem to be a magnet for these injuries. I've made my feelings on Jimmy G clear, but I think you win with Jimmy, not because of Jimmy, and I think that is the reason they went out to get Christian McCaffrey, who is electric, and if he is on the field, it totally changes it up. I don't know if Debo is going to be playing or not.
He is, yeah.
So if you have
Mike Florio was talking about this evening when I watched it. Yeah, he's due to play.
So you have Debo, you have McCaffrey, you have Ayuk. The Chargers' defense is good, but I just think that there's too many weapons there. If you switch the QBs, that would be quite telling. If Justin Herbert had the sort of weapons that Jimmy G has, I think, my goodness, what sort of points would he put up? I think this will be a slog because I think you have two teams who defensively are okay, and I know you question Staley, but I think that's maybe making poor decisions in terms of going for it on fourth down and stuff like that. But to me, we went with the Falcons last week, and ultimately they were a stupid fumble away
Yeah,
from winning that.
exactly.
Um, I do think this will be a tight game, but I am going to say that the 49ers win it. But I think that yeah, it will end up being a close one, and yeah, who knows what will happen in with the Chargers in the off season, because if things don't go right for them, I think they will inevitably have to make changes to the coaching staff because they have a ridiculously talented QB and they need to obviously make the most of the rookie deal there. Michael is still a believer in the Chargers and he thinks that they are going to get the win. Brian, any final points on this, or indeed any of Sunday's games before we wrap up?
No, I suppose just to say, unfortunately, you won't be joining me in Munich this weekend. Myself and Michael will be out there pushing content out throughout the course of the weekend. I believe we're going to be doing a broadcast of some sort on Saturday afternoon from Munich, the city centre itself. A lot of content going out Sunday at the game as well. Significant weekend for the NFL. First ever game to be played in mainland Europe and at the Allianz Arena. And a great game as well. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing Seattle firsthand. Quite high on them, as you know, at the start of the season. So a lot of expectation around Brady going in, having won last weekend, that they will ride the ship and get their season back on track. But I think they're up against a stiff opposition in Seattle. But it's the makings of a great game and a great weekend ahead for the NFL, for fans this side of the world, and as well for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully yourself and Michael will thoroughly enjoy the time over there. Certainly, I think the atmosphere will be electric. It will be very interesting to compare that to London. But obviously, there's such a culture of American football and such history of it in Germany that I really do think the atmosphere will be something else, and look forward to hearing the stories. We will be back again on Monday to review all of the Week 10, uh, I guess all of Sunday's action, and to preview Monday Night Football. In the interim, please do subscribe on YouTube. Please do rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It means a lot and it does help other people to find us. You can always reach out on Twitter. We always enjoy interacting with fans. And if you are heading over to the game in Munich, enjoy it. Check out the content and reach out to the lads. They will be over there. Brian, you get in on Saturday. Michael is obviously there at the moment, but it should be a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in this evening, and we look forward to talking to you all again on Monday.
Thank you.